Good morning to you from Carlton Marshes. I hope you can see clearly the scene that I can see. It's the sunrise, the eastern morning, and sometimes on these small smartphones you don't really get the full glory of the scene, but it's really quite fantastic, isn't it, to see how the sun comes up every day and brings glory to the earth. And God is so good. As it says, the sun shines on the good and the evil. They, of course, only have it for a time. We have it forever in Jesus. So this morning I'm down here at the marshes. Rather annoying, actually. I don't know if you can notice here. There's these little bits of wood. They're like blocks. I think they're supposed to sort of represent where you park your car. When I arrived here, it was pitch dark and didn't see them. As I manoeuvred my car forward, I heard this crunching sound. You know, that awful sound that you hear when something's happened to your vehicle. And you don't quite know what it is until you get out. When I got out, I noticed that I had broken a plastic canopy underneath the vehicle itself. Fortunately, no damage to the actual car, but all these unexpected things that sort of happen to one. And the enemy gets to us. He wants to disrupt us. He wanted to put me off sharing with you this morning, I suppose. And that's how he works. And last night as well, I put my key in the ignition, and suddenly it's one of these remote things, you know, with the key, and it kept on switching on and off all the time. And it's still doing it this morning. But glory to the Lord, it doesn't matter. What matters is that it's not so much our possessions, it's Him who possesses us that matters. He is our glory and our strength. And this morning a word came to me. I was going to share something else actually from the Old Testament, but I'll leave that for another day. But this morning the word tolerate came to my mind. And yesterday, those of you that saw my video will know that I spoke about the Archbishop of Canterbury, or as I refer to him, the Archbishop of Wokerberry. And what's happening at the moment is that we're starting to see convergence. Convergence in politics, convergence in religion, convergence in the ways we think. Everything's being hijacked, brought into one system, as we know. In politics, we call it globalism. And I think Jesus probably might also have used a similar term if he were here. And of course, he dealt with the Pharisees. He dealt with their system, and he spoke directly into it. And it's interesting to see that in the scriptures. I just want to be able to share with you shortly some scriptures just to confirm and show what Jesus did in terms of how to speak against sin, and how the word tolerate seems to come in. Well, I'm back in the car again. I actually hoped I could do a bit more of a ramble around the marshes, but it's a little bit windy, and of course that affects the sound, and I don't want to cause that kind of problem. Had enough problems already this morning. I want to start off just to read you a passage of scripture. It's from Mathew 10, as 1 to 15. I spoke about just now the word tolerate. Well, the actual word tolerate isn't in the Bible itself, but there are 6 references to the word tolerable in the KJV, which is translated bearable in the modern translations. But sticking to the word tolerable, and just want to read to you Matthew 10 verses 1 to 15, and see what Jesus is having to say about things. And when he had called unto him his 12 disciples, He gave them power against unclean spirits to cast them out and to heal all manner of sicknesses and all manner of disease. Now the names of the 12 apostles are these: the first Simon, who is called Peter, and Andrew his brother, James the son of Zebedee, and John his brother, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Mathew the publican, James the son of Alphaeus, and Lebbaeus, whose surname was Thaddeus, Simon the Canaanite, and Judas Iscariot, who also betrayed him. It's actually interesting, isn't it, that it's important. God cares about each individual. He names his disciples here, and he names who they come from, and he's aware of their hearts. He knows the hearts of his disciples. He knew the heart of Judas right from the very start, the son of perdition. God knows our hearts, and he knows those who will follow him to the end, those who will abandon him. Scary thought, that, isn't it? Those who will tolerate the walk in Christ, those who will bear it to the very end. Anyway, carrying on. These 12 Jesus sent forth and commanded them. He didn't say, well, if you feel like it. He gave them a commandment as their Lord and Master. It was a loving commandment too. And he said, go not into the way of the Gentiles, and into any city of the Samaritans enter ye not. It wasn't time, you see. The time hadn't arrived yet to speak to the Gentiles, to deal with the Gentiles. He first had to reach Israel. But go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And as ye go, preach, saying, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. These were the people that had the law and the prophets. They had the knowledge and vision of the one true God, and they lost it. So it was important that Jesus reached out to them because of his promises to the patriarchs. Heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, raise the dead, cast out devils. This was Christianity of the real intent. This is what God really intended for the propagation of his truth, to bring people back, the doing of signs and wonders and miracles. There are many today, of course, who say that was for then, and for now it's different. I'm not one of those that believe that. I believe that we need to stand strong in what Jesus said. And when he sent out the disciples, he sent them out with power. Heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, raise the dead, cast out devils. Freely you have received, freely give. We may not see much of it now, but it's there. It's real. And there's always a challenge to us, isn't it, of how much of a mustard seed of faith we have in believing that God can move mountains. Mountains in our own lives, mountains in the lives of others. So Jesus sent them out with power. Provide neither gold nor silver nor brass in your purses, nor scrip for your journey, neither 2 coats, neither shoes, nor yet staves, for the workman is worthy of his meat. And into whatsoever city, this is now getting to the key point here, into whatsoever city or town you shall enter, inquire who in it is worthy, and there abide till ye go thence. And when you come into a house, salute it. Very important things that Jesus commanded the disciples. It was like an etiquette, how to behave when you're amongst those that you want to reach. Same applies, of course, to us. We need wisdom from the Lord, don't we? And how we approach people with the truth, how we lay the pathway before them. And if the house be worthy, let your peace come upon it. God gave them something. He gave them something special. Peace from the power of his Spirit, which they could either deposit or keep inside them. But if it be not worthy, let your peace return to you. So something would have emanated from the disciples when they entered a house. Something would have flowed out from them. And when we go into the world, we also carry that peace, don't we, within us. We can let it reach out to other people. But of course, where it's rejected, we can bring it straight back into ourselves again. It hasn't changed. There's no cessation of Jesus' power. Verse 14, going on here. What and whosoever shall not receive you, see, nor hear your words, when you depart out of that house or city, shake off the dust of your feet. There was a lot of dust around in those days. So I think it was quite significant, the use of that symbology, to be able to shake off the dust. Just get rid of it. Just every vestige of rejection, just throw it off. Verily I say unto you, it shall be more tolerable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment than for that city. As I say, there are only 6 uses of the word tolerable. And there's the first one there. What will it really be like when people reject Jesus? What are we told today by the Archbishop of Wokerbury? Tolerate other religions. Tolerate people that are different to you, because they might have a little bit of extra truth that you haven't got. They might be able to teach you something you haven't got in Jesus. But we know that as Christians, in Jesus, we have all in all. We have that glorious sunrise which rises in our hearts. The morning star comes into us and we disseminate his peace. And today the world is saying you must tolerate everyone else. But they're not going to tolerate us, that's for sure. They won't tolerate us for one single moment. It reminds me of when I was witnessing to Jewish people in Israel many years ago, back in the 80s. They wouldn't tolerate the word that I was giving. They would want to talk to me all the time and tell me how wrong I was and show me from the scriptures. You're a Jew. Don't you understand what the scriptures say? And I would say to them that Jesus is the Messiah. But they would have none of it. And this is what's going to happen in the end. There is only one truth, let's face it. And when we speak about that truth, people don't want to hear it. We can talk about Buddha, we can talk about Allah, we can talk about Confucius, we can talk about all the philosophers and how we might adhere to them. And people will tolerate that, but they will not tolerate the truth. When they turn against it. And what does Jesus say here? This is the judgment that's coming. It'll be more tolerable for Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of the judgment than for that city. Sodom and Gomorrah was so severely judged. And God is saying here that it's going to be worse for them. That's quite incredible. And he backs these words up. Mathew 11, verses 20 to 22. And he began to upbraid the cities wherein most of his mighty works were done. Jesus was in the cities, showing them his power, showing them his glory. And why did he upbraid the cities? He says here, because they repented not. They didn't turn from their wicked ways. Even seeing the miracles, they didn't turn. Even seeing who Jesus was and what he could do, that didn't turn them. Woe unto thee, Chorazin! Woe unto thee, Bethsaida! For if the mighty works which were done in you had been done in Tyre and Sidon, they would have repented long ago in sackcloth and ashes. It's interesting how he makes a comparison there with Tyre and Sidon. He's saying if you had turned from your sin, God would have turned to you. He would have turned his face to you again. Matthew 11, 20 to 24. Sorry, Mark 6. No, sorry, I'm just going on here to 24. Yeah, apologies. So, Matthew 11, 20 to 21. And then 22 he goes on. But I say unto you, it shall be more tolerable for Tyre and Sidon at the day of judgment than for you. More tolerable, more bearable. The true term, the true use of the term tolerable. And thou, Capernaum, which are exalted unto heaven, shalt thou be brought down to hell. For if the mighty works which had been done in thee had been done in Sodom, it would have remained until this day. But I say unto you, that it shall be more tolerable for the land of Sodom in the day of judgment than for thee. What city do you live in? How tolerable is it for your city to hear the word of God? Or will your city be like one of these, brought down to hell? It's important too at the moment, while we still have time, to pray for our towns and cities. The town that I'm presently residing in Suffolk, was one of the last places in the whole country to have a spiritual revival back in 1921. God remembers those times. He remembers the times when men turned their hearts to him. But it says here that he's also going to remember the time when men turn away from him. And they look away, as they do now in the world, looking to the globalist one world system, thinking that men in their new ideas, in their new ways of thinking, are going to bring some sort of peace on the earth, that somehow we can change everything. But it's not going to happen. Mark 6, verse 11, Jesus confirms this again. And whosoever shall not receive you, he says again to the disciples, this is the same passage here as when he sent them out, except this is Mark's version. Whosoever shall not receive you, nor hear you, when you depart thence, again he says, shake off the dust under your feet for a testimony against them. I love these, the way the Gospels verify one another. So make sure you hear those phrases, that they're repeated in the other Gospels. Verily I say unto you, it shall be more tolerable for Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment than for that city. And also in Luke chapter 10 and verse 12 and verse 14. But I say unto you, that it shall be more tolerable in that day for Sodom than for that city. And verse 14, but it shall be more tolerable for Tyre and Sidon at the judgment than for you. It's interesting, that's the only time in the scripture that Jesus says it will be more tolerable. Doesn't mean that they won't be judged, but maybe there'll be a lesser judgment. God will have his ways of judging us, and one day the books will be opened for those that don't know him, and they'll be judged by the works that they have done. All of us desire our families to be saved. All of us desire our best friends to be saved. But God sends us out, doesn't he? He doesn't just send us out to preach the good news that he's died for our sin and all the rest of it. He wants you to know, that those of you that don't know him, that there is a place where he cannot tolerate sin anymore. There comes a time when he turns his back and he says, I've seen enough. I spoke about a brother the other day who had turned away from he initially was a wonderful child of the Lord and a worship leader. He turned away to witchcraft, and then he came back to Christ, and we rejoiced, and now we find out that he's turned away again. And we can't keep on turning back and turning away, turning back and turning away. There comes a time when we get given over to our sin, and God says, no more. I can't tolerate anymore. And so, as we see the world darken, we know that there are a limited number of sunrises coming. And the day of darkness and of gloom is about to fall upon the earth. There will be a tribulation like has never been seen on the earth before. And men will cry for the sun. They'll cry for the light. They'll cry for the day. But they won't see the day. So it's beholden upon us, isn't it, to first examine ourselves to see that we're in the truth. And as we walk in the truth, to take that truth out to the world while the sun is still rising, while there are still days ahead. Jesus said, didn't he, in John 9 verse 4, I must work the works of him who sent me as long as it is day, for the night comes when no man can work. I leave you with that thought today. Have a blessed day.